Holy Ghost, I'm so grateful, God, you know you did the most when you created her for me, Lord, you know I have witnessed your glory, all this favor you showed me. When you gave it to me, I had to learn what to do with your blessing. Now I know that a man who findeth a wife finds a good thing. Yeah. So every time I think of her, I'm thinking you. And when I give my love to her, I'm thinking you. Loving her like Christ loved the church, 'cause you told me to. Yeah, she a missy on your glory. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm worthy, but I'm under your covenant, so I ain't worried. I'm just thanking you. When I think of her, I'm just thanking you. When I give her love, I'm just thanking you. Married and in love, I'm just thanking you. You. When I think of her, I'm just thanking you. When I give her love, I'm just thanking you. Married and in love, I'm just thanking you. Song of Solomon, chapter 8. Read it to me, tell me what it says. I know that you don't make mistakes, so if it's in the book, then it must be okay to love her. No, I'm not ashamed, I won't shy away. I know I was made to love her. God give me grace, and I hope that every night feels like a wedding night. I pray, oh yeah. Yes, a man who findeth a wife finds a good thing. So every time I think of her, I'm thinking you. And when I give my love to her, I'm thanking you. Loving her like Christ loved the church, 'cause you told me to. Yeah, she a missy on your glory. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm worthy, but I'm under your covenant, so I ain't worried. I'm just thanking you. I don't understand why we can't talk about being in love with the one he gave us. He know what he was doing, 'cause she was his greatest creation. So I hope that you don't mind when I testify the way I do. So when I think about loving her, I just want to thank you. And when I give my love to her, I'm thanking you. Loving her like Christ loved the church, 'cause you told me to. Yeah, she a missy on your glory. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm worthy, but I'm under your covenant, so I ain't worried. I'm just thanking you. When I think of her, I'm just thanking you. When I give her love, I'm just thanking you. Married and in love, I'm just thanking you. When I think of her, I'm just thanking you. When I give her love, I'm just thanking you. Married and in love, I'm just thanking you.
Everybody clap those hands right here. Put those hands together right here.
I've been kept through danger, seen and unseen. I keep wondering why my chief still cares about me. He could have left me where my sin should have kept me, but he brought me from a mighty long way.
He brought me. 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 He brought
Connecting the community through gospel. The new 107.9 FM, W300EB, Macon, and WDDO 980 AM, Perry, Macon.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
It is now time for the live broadcast of the NAACP with Gwenette Westbrooks and Mr. Dumas.
Good evening and welcome to another segment of the NAACP Truth Show. I'm Willie Dumas, your host. Certainly happy you could join us this evening. Looking forward to a great show today. I'll be joined later by President Westbrooks. Hope you had a great 4th of July. We had an off day on last Monday, and we're happy to be back in the studio. Hope you got a chance to celebrate and enjoy your family. I certainly did, and look forward to the show today. A lot going on in the community, and we're trying to stay on top of things. Violence, it seems, is still the major topic plaguing our city. And I understand that our mayor has put together a task force called MVP, I believe is the actual title name. And it's a focus program that deals with lowering the violence and crime in the city. Our neighborhoods seem to have been plagued with many violent episodes as it related to the upcoming week and holiday. And so certainly we know that it's a major concern in our community. And when it affects one community, of course, it affects all communities. And so we applaud the mayor for putting together this task force group called MVP. I believe they met and actually had quite an outbreak. Quite a good showing of people to turn out and to voice their opinions and concerns about various solutions that can take place to help curb the crime here in Macon, Georgia. I want to send a shout out to Reverend Bumpus, who was insulated this past weekend at New Fellowship Church. And of course, we applaud him in that installation service along with his lovely wife. And so New Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church here in Macon has new leadership. As we know, the late because of the late pastor who served there for many years and passed away. And so I'm sure they are very elated that they now have a permanent pastor in their church. And so we applaud them. We also applaud Reverend David L. Stanley, my pastor. He celebrated 35 years of service at Union Baptist Church. We didn't have a particular celebration, but we do uplift him for his service in this community and our church as well. We have a special guest that will be joining us today, and I'll let President Westbrooks introduce our special guest to all of you. But we're going to be focusing today on some of the new election laws and some of the new districts that are being drawn here in Georgia. You know, we've talked about this several times on our show as it relates to voter suppression and how a collective effort has been put together across the country, particularly in with Republican Senates and House representatives that have voted to actually put new laws in place that simply suppresses the vote. And so we'll be looking at how that will affect Georgia and also some of the other laws that have been in place, and just kind of get a breakdown. I believe our special guest has been very close to this particular issue, and will actually be able to address those issues. Sydney Battles with the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda will, I believe, is maybe who's going to join us, or at least she's joined us in Skype. And so, Sydney, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
I can't hear you, but maybe the listening audience can. If I can get my technician, maybe he can do an adjustment here so I can hear you. And he'll be, I can't hear really.
Can you hear me
He's
now?
going to try to make an adjustment so we can bring you in. Okay, can say something, Miss Battles.
Can y'all hear me now?
No, I still can't hear.
Hold on.
Still no sound. Okay, can you say something again? Maybe I can pick you up.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you. I may need my headset turned up just a bit. We're certainly happy that you could join us today. So you could go ahead and kind of chime in and let the people know who are listening, first of all, about the People's Agenda. I used to attend the meetings on Tuesdays there in Atlanta, and I really enjoyed doing that along with Dr. Lowry and the rest of the group there, and had a wonderful time getting great information about the community. And so if you would just kind of open up and share some things with our listening audience.
Absolutely. So, as you know, the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda was convened by the late Dr. Joseph Lowry. We do have weekly meetings from 12 to 2. They are currently online, so please feel free to get that information and jump back in because we'd love to have you. But right now, what we're talking about is we have begun the redistricting process in Georgia.
Wow.
And, I'm sorry. I did want to mention for the People's Agenda, the things that we focus on are voting rights, economic justice, criminal justice reform, healthcare, you name it. Anything that's going to make life better for all Georgians, the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda is probably working on it.
That's right. You guys have been on the forefront.
Yeah. We are, of course, led by the most amazing Miss Helen Butler, who has been doing this work for years and is pretty much a legend in Georgia.
Absolutely. And also, if you could, let's talk a little bit about the voting laws that have certainly surfaced and kind of changed things in the state of Georgia. Instead of going forward, it seems we're going backwards. And so I'm sure you guys have had your ear to the ground as far as that goes. And if you could shed some light on what Georgians can expect with some of the new laws.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of different things going on right now that is really kind of trying to change the rules of the game, right? So first of all, we have SB 202, which has begun to take effect. It does a lot of things. It shortens the amount of time that you can get an absentee ballot. It shortens the runoff period. It effectively kind of makes it harder to vote for certain communities in Georgia. I will say that thanks to the amazing organizations and people that worked on this, that the SB 202 that we started with and the SB 202 that we wound up with are miles apart from each other and much better. But there are a number of things that folks need to know, including when your voter registration deadline is, because in the past, the voter registration deadline for the general election and the voter registration deadline for a runoff were different. Like when we saw the runoff that put both Ossoff and Warnock in the Senate, if you hadn't voted in the general election, you had time to register to vote so that you could vote in the runoff. They have changed that now, which is the entire reason that they shortened that runoff period.
Wow.
Yeah, and like election officials were begging them not to because it makes it almost impossible to certify an election. But again, it's not. It's about changing the rules of the game to make it harder to vote. And that's kind of what we're seeing here in the redistricting process as well. As long as I've been going, as long as I've been working in this field, and that's about 6 years now, we have tried to put standards in place for the redistricting process. We have asked for transparency. We've asked for independent redistricting commissions. We've asked for a way to make this fair to people. And at this point, there are no standards that are part of state law. So we are going to have to rely on people to show up and hold their elected officials accountable. So what we have happening right now is the state is holding a series of public town halls to hear from people about what they want the process to look like, what their communities of interest are, what they think their district needs to look like. Folks need to show up to those hearings and speak out. Right.
Now, are these across the state, or they're localized to a particular area?
So there were 11. There's 2 online meetings, 2 virtual meetings. They've already had one. The last virtual meeting is on July 30th. The meetings that you have left are Brunswick on July 26th, Albany on July 27th, Columbus on July 28th, and Macon on July 29th. So these are, you don't have to live in that area to attend one of those meetings. They only had one meeting for the entire metro Atlanta area. Oh, and I'm sorry, they are going to have to reschedule Augusta because they canceled it due to the storm.
Wow.
But yeah, you don't have, it is a situation where you have to travel somewhere to make sure that your voice is heard, or you can go to the website and submit your written comments.
Well, one thing for certain, with the election turning out, with people turning out as well as they did in the past election, we know the importance of making certain that, that continues as far as people being able to cast their vote, in a timely manner and in an effective manner. And so we do hope that people will support these meetings because it's going to be very important from this year on out as far as how elections go and how they turn out.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that we're doing as the People's Agenda to help people prepare for that, because public testimony can be such a kind of scary thing to some people, is we're holding town halls in each one of these cities in preparation for the state meeting, so that we give you sort of the redistricting 101 and then tips for preparing your testimony. So if you go to our website or to any of our social media platforms, which is @GCP Agenda, you can see the dates for those meetings and come out, and we will help you get ready to talk to your legislators for the 2 or 3 minutes that you're allowed.
Because people do need to understand, and I guess you can give some clarity on this. Even though these laws are put in place, they can be amended.
Exactly. I mean, SB 202 can be changed, right? It can be changed through litigation. And we know that there are a huge number of lawsuits right now against SB 202. There's, in fact, 5. And now the Department of Justice has entered into the fray as well. So not only can they just not even be amended, but they can be declared unconstitutional. We just have to keep showing up. And even if SB 202 was allowed to be implemented, we still have the For the People's Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act in Congress that would fix a lot of the problems that SB 202 is going to solve. One of the things that the For the People's Act does is it ends partisan gerrymandering. And that would be a huge thing to empower voters in Georgia or any state.
Because they're getting ready to redraw a lot of the districts according to what the census report actually indicated. And that can be troublesome because we do know that, I don't know the percentages on participation for the census, but a lot of times, we don't get the numbers we need. We don't get people to show up in the way that they should to give proper representation for those districts. And so that's a very important thing that's getting ready to happen very soon, I know.
Right, and keep in mind, like New York lost a representative because 108 people didn't complete the census.
Wow.
So, that ship has sailed. So being able to do that is no longer a thing. But what we've got to make sure of is that they use the data that they're going to be getting at the end of September to fairly draw the lines. Because what you can do, a decade ago they drew the lines. And they got 53% of the votes, and the Republicans won the majority, right?
Right.
Now, congressional districts can only be redrawn every 10 years. But in the state of Georgia, they allow like state Senate and state House districts to be changed during session. So those are changed more frequently than every 10 years.
Wow.
So you've got one particular party, because I'm going to keep it C3, you've got one particular party that gained control and then used that control to redraw lines so that even though they didn't gain voters, they gained a supermajority in the state house. And then they get to decide things like voting for SB 202 or HB 481 or silly things that we're going to see like next legislative session, where we're going to see all this anti-CRT legislation being passed instead of legislation that truly impacts Georgia and helps Georgians live a better life.
Okay. President Westbrooks just joined us. I'm not sure if she can hear you. She probably had the same issue.
Miss Battle. Can you hear me, Miss Battle?
I can. How are you?
Let's see. Let me figure out why.
I can hear her. Can you not hear her?
She just can't hear you.
Oh.
That's the only thing. But she's going to get some technical support. And while she's getting that, of course, not only are we looking at redistricting, but a lot of those laws, and I know particularly with the NAACP, we were used to providing individuals, that may have been dehydrated or whatever, water to drink and those kinds of things. And they actually made that, one of the things you couldn't do, to support the people when they're voting. And it kind of stands out like a sore thumb as far as one of those things that are just repressive, from that standpoint, just looking at that.
Yeah. I mean, how desperate do you have to be to make it harder to vote that you're going to make it illegal to be a good neighbor?
Exactly.
Right? That's ridiculous, especially when we've seen situations where people have been in line for 11 hours.
Right.
So yeah, I do want to say, here's the one thing that I do want to say about that particular statute in SB 202 is it is one of the easiest things that I think that we can organize around, because it's within that 150 feet line.
Right. That's
so
what I
if
was
you're at like 151 feet and you give somebody a bottle of water and be like, pass it down. You see what I'm saying? Like and that's one of the important things that we need to remember. SB 202 is bad. And I am not even beginning to play. The way that they can take over boards of elections, I lost sleep over that. Wow. But here's what we know. Turnout is going to be what defeats SB 202 or gerrymandering or any of those things. So as hopeless as that sort of seems, there is always a way to organize around that. We're actually going to be doing a tour in September and August and September where we're going around talking about how SB 202 changes voting. HR, I keep on calling it HR1, but it's S1 now and HR4, which is the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And I know I keep talking about that, but y'all, we have got to be contacting our representatives and our senators.
Right.
Like, abolish the filibuster, pass these laws now. We've got Texas Democrats fleeing the state to protect voting rights in Texas. So y'all need to end the filibuster and pass this legislation. But we're getting ready to do that. And we'll even have like printers and copiers, because to vote absentee, you're now going to have 2 copies of your ID, right?
Well, we've already started that.
Right.
Well, we've
So
already, I had spoken with Miss Butler about that we had something that we had already started doing, and she thought it was a good idea that that we, started spearheading that, because like you say, we do know that in order to be able to vote absentee, you have to actually have a voter ID to actually even request an application, and then you have to have a ID and to submit your. So we've already started doing that. Um, we're actually getting all the like senior citizens places like the Dempsey, people that are living in living assistance homes and different things like that. We've already, because we're partners with the housing authority, they've started setting up dates for us to actually go in and get that information, and that way we can also identify at that time who actually does not have um, actually have an ID, so we can try to work on trying to get those people IDs. I know there are other forms that they were saying you could use, like your voter ID, voter registration card. But the thing about it is, I don't trust any of that. I don't trust any of that.
right, there's because there's a list that you can use where they're just going to accept that ID, but then there's like the IDs that you can use where they're also going to do signature verification, which is hilarious because the whole thought process behind this was supposedly so we could end signature match
Right.
because it's problematic, but then they're still using it. But I love what you're saying, because that's what I love about Georgia is we organize around the BS, right?
Absolutely.
Like Georgians helping Georgians and organizing around the BS and still getting out there and still voting and still making our voices heard is literally what gets me out of bed in the morning.
I kind of missed the redistrict. I know you've been attending the meetings. Ms. Butler had told me about that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's very important, because I know um, kind of puts me in the mind of gerrymandering when you start talking about redistricting the different cities, or for the simple fact is that it's designed to put people in places that they know that's going to vote in order for people, for different parties to win. So I'm glad that you've been attending those meetings, and I know some the NAACP has been attending. I just don't know exactly who's been attending besides the state president. I reached out to them also today, because I thought that someone else was attending, but they said they were not. So I said we it's something that we got to talk about, this redistricting, because it's very important. People, and it's about educating also. We got to educate people so they'll understand what redistricting mean. I don't know if you explained that or not.
She did. She did cover. She even mentioned what happened in New York when they lost a representative because of the census.
Right. And right here in Bibb County, it was done that way. You got Commissioner Lucas in Southgate, which crosses over. She actually crosses over another commissioner's, a couple commissioners' district in order to get to her. So it's not making sense. The way the lines are drawn, it's not making sense. But it's actually designed so people that they want to win, to win. But like you said, Miss Battle, it's all about, we got to get back out and vote.
But you make a really good point, and we were talking about folks coming to these state meetings with information, and when you share stuff like that and you go, this doesn't make sense. Lawrenceville is cut up like a pizza. Macon, I believe it's Mercer College, is cut in half. UGA is in like 3 different districts. Like they use communities of interest are supposed to be kept together. The lines are supposed to make sense, and they're supposed to be contiguous. So when you see something that literally looks like a salamander or a snake, like Atlanta Parent Senate District, then you know something's up. You know that they're trying to do. And there are people who go, well, yeah, but we created majority minority districts, and that's true. But what they'll also do is they'll take more people than they need to create a minority majority district and destroy an opportunity district, just again to make sure that this one person, usually the incumbent, gets to stay there. And we've seen them move these lines so many times. But like what we were talking about earlier about turning out, I've seen in two sessions lately, 2020. Wait, this was no, 2020, where a Republican and a Democrat made a deal and co-sponsored a bill together where they were going to redraw lines to protect their seats. And the public shamed them so much that within 3 days they had both taken their names off of that. Right.
Yeah.
So again, show up, show out, let your voice be heard, and be like, hey, we're watching you. Like, partisan gerrymandering isn't illegal, but it's unethical. And if it's about integrity, we want to see your integrity.
Right. And you know something else, what really bothers me, Miss Battle, is and I'm putting the mean Battles, you got an S on your name. I had forgotten that out the first time. But out of everything that's going on in our country, everything that's been that's economically wise, voting affects all of that. Programs that have been put in place, that have been put in place, and then there are some of the programs are being in risk of being taken away. Just about everything that we deal with has to do with voting. Voting is something that really is a must. But what really concerns me is people that are being affected economically by these different policies still do not want to vote. I mean, it's just unreal.
No, but it's hard to continuously have to jump through these hurdles and watch the system be manipulated so that your vote counts less than it should. Right? It is really difficult. And I think that what we've got to do is go out there and tell people what you just said. If you care about your health care, if you care about your job, if you care about bandwidth, if you care about your child's public education,
everything has to do with voting.
Oh yeah,
exactly. Like, as much as, even when you're standing and hearing the idea of, oh my God, I'm going to stand in line for this long, I swear to God, I will bring you pizza. I will pass it down. I will figure out, but do connect that to what is important, because everything that's important to you, whether you like it or not, has something to do with voting, because everything that's important to you is political.
That's correct.
I think politics has a bad word, but it's a political thing. Even I was having a conversation yesterday because in the state of Georgia, landlords have a ridiculous amount of power and tenants have almost no rights.
I just got I was a little late coming here because I just got off the phone with somebody dealing with it's just unreal.
Yeah.
The way these landlords use their power.
Go back to the fact that there is a power system in place, and the only way to change the power system is to get out and vote.
That's
absolutely, the numbers have to be there.
And then and what people don't realize is, if you go into the courts, and those people are voted in. And our judicial system are voted in, so they have a lot to do with whether or not someone's evicted or not evicted. So we have to look at all of that. But you shouldn't have to explain, do an educational. Well, we're having to do that, but you still have to now tell, especially our young people, why it's important that you need to vote. You have to give them some type of. You can't just say you need to vote. They want to know why. And that's good. But I think we're going to have to make sure that people are educated enough so they'll know, the importance of voting.
Yeah. We're running out of time, but we certainly thank you, Miss
But if
Cindy
you can
Battles.
come back on, we would welcome you to come back on. Feel free to come back
Absolutely.
on anytime you have any updated information, anything you need to share. You're welcome to come back on the show.
Thank you so much. Anytime y'all invite me, I'll be here.
Thank you so much.
Have a great evening.
Gwenette Westbrooks and Mr. Dumas. Come join us next Monday at 4 o'clock p.m. on 980
So we got to get our
WDDO.
phone back. Cause it seem like we.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.